Well, that was surprisingly good. Not kind of passable, but actually pretty good. Alright, before we get started, as always, a quick thank you to my patron over on Patreon. If you enjoy the content I make and would like to offer your support for as little as $1 a month, you can get your name listed right here at the start of every video. Link in the description below. And now, let's get into the actual review.
How about I give you a ride home?
This isn't the way to my house.
It's a shortcut. You're my hostage. What you got down there? Something for me?
Why?
You tried kidnapping me!
You're 19. Grow up.
No Hard Feelings tells the story of Maddie, played by Jennifer Lawrence, who's about to lose her home. Looking for a car so she can Uber, she comes across a Craigslist ad where two rich helicopter parents, played by Matthew Broderick and Laura Benatti, want to hire a woman to date their socially awkward son Percy, played by Andrew Barr Feldman, before he heads off to college in exchange for a car. But Maddie finds that dating Percy may prove a lot harder than she ever anticipated. This film has been receiving a little bit of pre-release buzz. Initially, it was because many people were pointing out that this film's premise feels very much like an old-school mid-2000s raunchy sex comedy. But then it received a ton of online criticism because it was said that the premise felt like it was 2 decades old. There have been people who have claimed this film's premise promotes grooming, makes light of male sexual abuse victims, and perpetuates the stereotype that a young man who is still a virgin is not a man. And as someone who has actually seen the film, I can tell you that I don't think any of those things are true. I don't want to get into this too much since I actually want to talk about the film's artistic merits, but I will say this related to the controversy. For starters, the film doesn't ask us to excuse Maddie's actions. The film acknowledges that what she's doing is wrong, and she is consistently punished throughout the film for it, including being the brunt of several painful slapstick gags, which, as a quick aside, I actually found really refreshing for a comedy with a female lead. And it shows that even she has her limits, like when at one point she refuses to take his virginity because he's drunk. Also, no, she's not grooming him. She's trying to seduce him. And that's a big difference. I really think the word grooming should not be watered down to include a 32-year-old woman trying to seduce a 19-year-old guy, but that's just me. Now, I understand people that say they don't want to see the film because the premise sounds icky. And I'm not going to criticize you for that, but I really do think the entire context of the film needs to be taken into consideration when we're talking about this. Anyway, focusing back on what the film is, No Hard Feelings does genuinely feel like a throwback to those kind of old school R-rated raunchy comedies from the mid-2000s to mid-2010s. One of the things that can be very difficult in trying to pull off a movie like this is the idea of restraint. I know a lot of people think that if your movie is rated R, that means you can indulge in every single crude or crass joke willy-nilly and just drown the film in sleaze. But really, the most successful ones understand that if you do that, the joke really is going to wear out its welcome really fast. Shock humor works when it's used sporadically. That's why it's called shock humor. If you use it too much, it ceases to be shocking. And that's what I liked about this film. Yes, it absolutely can get really raunchy, it can get outrageous, and it can get gross, but the film largely understands that that can't be the default setting, and that sometimes they need to pull it back just a little bit. There's an excellent scene where I was fully expecting some kind of really embarrassing situation to unfold, but then it actually takes the moment really seriously, and it's a really sweet moment. I guess you could say that my expectations were subverted. The comedic set pieces in this film are very well spread out, and I don't want to really go into them because obviously the joke will be a lot funnier if you don't actually know what's coming. But yeah, this movie is pretty funny. Now, I can't think of many moments where I was belly laughing, but I laughed a good maybe 15 to 20 times throughout this film, and honestly, after having sat through some really painful comedies this year that couldn't even muster a laugh, that's practically like Nirvana. But the thing that really shocked me the most about this film was that underneath all the cynical tone and crass sex jokes, there's actually a really sweet center to the proceedings. The actual bond that grows between these two characters, the Jennifer Lawrence and Andrew Barr Feldman characters, is really strong. And the film goes out of its way to show these two characters actually managing to grow and actually making changes and becoming better people. And the film surprisingly has some Ragnar poignant things to say about sex. That it shouldn't be something that we just do, that there should be more of an emotional attachment there. Or at the very least, saying that people that do decide to wait for an emotional connection to have sex shouldn't be shamed for waiting. It's actually a pretty mature message, at least for a film with this kind of premise. And the characters do actually feel like real people. Maddie is written to be an overly cynical and even kind of nasty person at the start, but the film slowly reveals the broken person that she actually is underneath all of it. And thankfully, Jennifer Lawrence is so easily watchable and really does have great comedic instincts that we do actually want to watch a character that, handled poorly, could have really come across a lot worse than she actually does. Jennifer Lawrence seems to be working to reinvent herself following the box office and audience reception disaster that was Mother, and honestly, if she decides to go this route of starring in mid-budget comedies, I think she'd be right at home. This is the first film of hers I've seen in a long while where it genuinely feels like she actually wants to be here, and that energy is infectious. Andrew Barr Feldman is also really good in the film. A lesser actor would have taken the character of Percy and just turned him into another nerdy virgin stereotype, but he actually comes across as a real person. He's not just a walking punchline. The character is written and portrayed for you to feel sorry for him and to make you actually want him to grow out of his shell. Again, with worse writing and worse acting, the character could have completely flopped, come across as annoying or just so pathetic that you wonder how he's even able to function, or as someone the audience is just supposed to mock. But they find that perfect balance of making you laugh at his misfortune, but also pity him at the same time, which is hard to do. Now, this film isn't completely polished. There are plot elements that seem to be randomly introduced and then randomly dropped. Like a nanny character who it seems like they're setting up to be some kind of antagonist, but it just kind of pays off to a single lame punchline. Or how it seems like they're setting up that Maddie is going to become an internet punching bag after she gets recorded saying something that could be construed as being homophobic, but then that never comes back into play, so I don't know why it's in the film. And there are moments where they don't really let a joke just sit when it should and instead over-explains it. Like when Maddie tells a man of Native American descent that he can't possibly understand how it feels to have other people kick him out of his home. It's a funny joke on its own, but then they feel the need to explain the joke when it's not really needed. And the pacing in the second half can get a little weird at times, sometimes jumping from plot point to plot point just a little bit too quickly. Yeah, these are missteps, but honestly, they're not that bad. There was nothing painful about this film. I actually found myself enjoying the overwhelming majority of it. And while I can't go so far as to call it hilarious, this is a pretty funny movie. This won't reinvent the comedic wheel, but I think for people that just want to escape and enjoy a silly but naughty comedy while also getting a good solid story about two people who start bringing out the best in each other, this will scratch that cinematic itch and scratch it well. No Hard Feeling gets a really strong half-full shot. Had the film been polished just a little bit more, I'd be willing to give it a full shot, but yeah, if this sounds like the kind of film that you would enjoy, I would recommend you see this in the theater if you can. Comedies haven't been doing too well at the box office as of late, and I actually think this is a good one. Just, keep in mind it is rated R for very good reason, so maybe keep the kiddies and parents at home. And I guess that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you want to see my early thoughts of any film I watch or to read more of my reviews, make sure to check out my Letterboxd account. The link to that is in the description below. And make sure that you're subscribed so that you don't miss any upcoming reviews. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.